England versus New Zealand. It's always one of the most highly anticipated games of the rugby calendar. And this one was no disappointment for England fans. Hello, amateurs. Welcome back to the channel. Now then, it's a little bit delayed with this one because I watched this one in the pub. So with minimal notes, minimal remembering of a lot of the things that happened, I'm going to try and get into this one. And I've looked through all the highlights packages and there's a lot of really interesting things that I'm going to pick up on. So join me in this analysis as we get along. Early in this game, and the things that you want to do against New Zealand weren't happening for England. England were creating chances and not taking them, notably one for Sam Underhill when it dropped out of his hand when an offload looked likely to provide a score. And also, the Kiwis were doing what they do at that time. When they got in the red zone, when they got opportunities, they were scoring, and it was Nuku who got over for the opening score. And I'm going to call out Sam Underhill again. I love Sam Underhill, but I thought he was a little bit passive at guard for this try. He just didn't move forward and sort of take him on, and that allowed Nuku to drive over for the opening score. And New Zealand scored again very soon afterwards, and it felt ominous in the pub. At that time, there were groans as Quinn Tupai whipped a phenomenal pass, a real risky pass, 25 metres. It bounced once. Cody Taylor stepped back inside to score the try, and 12-0 to New Zealand. And it just felt, yeah, ominous was the word, because New Zealand were looking lethal at that time, and England were looking, they were getting so far in the game, but they're not finishing their chances, not taking the points. And taking the points is what would happen shortly afterwards, as England got the try through Ollie Lawrence off of a scrum. Now, it's got to be said, I was expecting the scrum battle to be really close, and it was, but I'd say England got the edge in the scrum over the course of the whole game as well. And they got a little nudge on this one, which just makes a difference. It just gets you on the front foot. George Ford fed to Ollie Lawrence, and Lawrence did a great job of just stepping, which meant Leroy Carter hit with the wrong shoulder and was so easy to bounce off. He then got through Roygaard and Bowden Barrett, who was coming across as well, to slam the ball down for the try. But Ford missed the conversion, which was a rare error for him on the day. He'd also kicked one of the previous kickoffs out on the full, and I think that might have been the only two errors from George Ford, who was otherwise absolutely imperious in this game. And as I mentioned earlier, taking the points, you need to score when you get the territory down there. So I don't know whether it was just coming up to half time. Maybe we've been through a few phases and weren't really making ground, weren't really breaking them. Maybe it was the missed opportunities earlier in the game. And if we stayed down there and still didn't get points, all of these factors, I'm sure, were going on in George Ford's head when he decided to knock over two drop goals just before half time to get England back within a point. And I would say, I don't know what the territory stats are or anything like that, but it felt like England probably had the edge of that first half. So to get back to within a point at half time would have probably made them feel pretty good. And they'd have felt a whole lot better early in the second half, as Cody Taylor got a yellow card for knocking the ball out of a ruck on the floor. This was only picked up by the TMO. The England players complained immediately. You could see them kind of like making a bit of a fuss, and the TMO spotted it. But I'm gonna call this out. I think we're seeing too much TMO intervention at the moment. I think the game needs to be allowed to flow. And if there's little fouls like this, little professional fouls, I don't mind it. I prefer the game to have flow rather than get stopped for things like this. And this goes, this isn't just, obviously this is a New Zealand offence, but there was a similar one later on when Mario Toji got pinged for putting a hand through a line out and the ball popping out of that again. And these are actually both really quite marginal calls. I think they were both correct. I'm not saying they were wrong, but they were quite marginal. So for me, I want to see less TMO, not more, even though this one absolutely benefited England because they got the entry. Taylor got the yellow card, and it led directly actually to another try for England. And this was a Sam Underhill try. Now, very interestingly, the next try that England would score, they used exactly the same starter play. So that's Pepper at the front of the line out, whizzed across the face of the winger to Lawrence. And Lawrence on this occasion just hit the ball up. Now, there's a couple of things here. England use the same starter plays really often from different phases, different positions on the pitch. and it's exactly the same shape, but they'll use different options. So the defence is seeing the same, seeing the same, seeing the same, and then suddenly England will choose a different option, and that would come out later in this game when we talk about the Fraser Dingwall try. But as I said, also another interesting thing about this was it was front ball, and that's because New Zealand just left the front completely clear. That Pepper catch was completely unmarked. Now there was a time 2 years ago, maybe a little bit longer, when England would only ever want to get middle or back ball because it's better to attack from. But what we've seen from them now is that they've really developed attacking plays, really effective attacking plays off front ball. And that's what's happening here. So England will now take the line-out ball wherever it's available, and they've got attacking plays to run off of those situations, no matter where they get it from. So real development there from England, I think. Now, the try itself, Alex Mitchell darted right, and there was some question marks about crossing. Tamatai Williams certainly stuck his hand out, and maybe 5-6 years ago, it probably would have been given as crossing, but the referees use a lot more subtlety around the decisions now. No defenders were actually taken out. The gap between Mitchell and I'm not sure who was running in front of him was actually quite large. So the referee, I think, and it's common to how we've seen referees referee these situations in for quite a long time now, did not give a penalty for crossing, and it went back to Underhill. Pepper with the pick up, move forward, and then pass, just tying those inside defenders, which gave Underhill a one-on-one with Bowden Barrett, and there was only going to be one winner there. England flying 18-12 ahead at this point, and shortly afterwards there was another try, but this one was disallowed. George Ford striding through off a bouncing ball. Again, this was TMO, and they were checking whether it was a knock on. And it was only after they were kind of a little bit confused about the knock on that they sort of realised that Roebuck had joined the line from the line out too early. But we never actually saw the wide angle. Certainly I didn't from the pub. Maybe you did, Sal, at home. I'm not sure. But anyway, he was penalised in the end. Maybe rightly so. But again, it felt like maybe a marginal call. Hard to say. Didn't really see it. But all that led to a bit of pressure, like almost like England deserved to be further ahead than they were. And it was a huge kind of explosion of relief, probably, that when Dingwall got over. And like I said, it was exactly the same starter play, just from the other side of the pitch. And this time Lawrence took the ball close to the line, and the gap was there for Dingwall. Lawrence spotted it. I think it was Billy Proctor at 13, hadn't come in as far this time, where he had done the past time before. Maybe he was thinking they were going to go to George Ford out the back this time, use a different option. Dingwall went through untouched for a try that would have been given in touch rugby. England now 25-12 up. And also very important to remember, or to note rather, that position came from another bit of excellent play from George Ford. England had got a decent attacking movement up the right hand side, and there was a lot of space coming back left, a lot of space and a lot of numbers for England. One of the Kiwis jumped out of the line, and George Ford analysed all that in seconds, just saw it. Okay, we did have an opportunity there, but it's gone now. What's the next best opportunity? Rearranged his body, kicked the 50-22, and that is where the Fraser Dingwall try came from. And it felt like, to a point, that was the game broken, 25-12, but still within two scores. So my overwhelming feeling was, don't relax. You've got to keep going. The Kiwis are so dangerous. They can score from anywhere, and they don't need huge amounts of territory or possession to do it. So stay on it. But after that, it felt like it was all New Zealand for a period of time. They were getting lots of decisions from the referee, some of them a little bit marginal, but they were everything seemed to be going to New Zealand at that point, and they were playing well as well. It was during this period that the Itoje line-out offence happened, when it felt like England had won a turnover. Ben Earl got yellow carded. I think that was for dragging down a maul. That's right, yeah, he came through the maul, and it looked like he came through the maul legally because he was bound in by New Zealand players. But then when he got through and onto the ball, he dragged it down, and you're not allowed to do that. So I think it was a correct call to give it a penalty and a yellow card from that. And the Kiwis scored very soon afterwards, with Will Jordan scything through an absolutely threadbare England defence. Now, interestingly, from this, again, two of the back rowers that have come on off the bench for England, Henry Pollock and Tom Curry, they approached this ruck situation completely differently. And maybe this is easy to judge in hindsight, rather than, in the moment, people might have been making the correct decisions. But Pollock gets attracted to the ruck. He's closest to that ruck out of those two initially, and he looks at it, trying to go for a sniff of a turnover. But you know, it was never really on. The ball was never there and available. Whereas Tom Curry came flying round, filled in the inside space, and almost actually overtook Fraser Dingwall, but he was coming that fast into the line. If he pushed Dingwall and Dingwall had pushed Roebuck, he might well have got to Will Jordan, but they didn't. And even more so, if Pollock had gone round there first as well and pushed Dingwall and Roebuck, it might have made it a lot harder for New Zealand to score from that phase. Again, hard to say whether it's the right decision or the wrong decision. Henry Pollock has got so many turnovers that I thought were completely improbable. So I wonder, if they look at that, I wonder what analysis point they'll come to, whether maybe he should have gone far side and pushed the defensive line out, or whether they still give him free remit to just go and nick a turnover if you possibly can. But that was New Zealand back in the game, 25-19, and absolutely game on. Again, it's that kind of psychological thing where it had felt like England had been dominant for most of the game, but now it's 3 tries apiece and they're within a score again. And it just, that pressure, it can come on in lots of different ways. But I've got to say, I just thought England were calm. I felt they dealt with everything. And I just thought there was a really solid performance throughout. It was helped by Wallace Satiti flying so far across the line out and into Itoji. It was one of the most obvious line out penalties you'll ever see. George Ford knocked that over for 28-19, and it felt like Twickenham both exhaled and roared at the same time, because really it was a long way back for New Zealand then. They tried playing from deep, and it was a pass out the back to Will Jordan, who either looked like he wasn't expecting it or was so exhausted that he just looked at it and watched it bounce on the floor past him. Henry Pollock charging through, got to it first with the left foot, and then placed a perfect chip through for Roebuck to pick up and score in the corner. Yeah, it came off his shin, obviously, but then he had the cheek to point to Tom Roebuck, as in, there you go, repaying your favour for the try that he scored against Australia. Twickenham went mad, 33-19, and a thoroughly deserved victory for England. And for me, I thought, like I say, I thought this was really solid. There was lots of good stuff, but it just feels like there's still quite a long way to go from England. In like an even tighter test match, they're going to need to be more efficient in the red zone. They're going to need to score more of the chances that they created. So, really happy for the win for England, and and excited about what the future holds, because I still think there's a lot of development in this side. I mentioned a lot of the players that I thought played well. I thought the scrum went well throughout, but also I've got to say, I think this was probably Alex Coles' best performance for England. He gets so many involvements. He's always in the game. But I've always thought he just looked a little bit lightweight. I didn't really think that in this game. I thought that he had a really solid international second row performance, and he did so much good work for England that I thought he could have been in the running for man of the match as well. Okay, that's a lot. That's it for me. What do you think? Let me know in the comments down below. As always, any players that I didn't mention or moments that were critical, let's have a conversation about it down there. And give the video a thumbs up while you're down there if you don't mind. It helps other great rugby fans just like you find it. And you can subscribe there. You can watch that one next. And don't forget to get out and play.